the finger turns around and points at me, and now I'm in control. Now I'm the one that, yeah, it might, as long as I accept that it's my fault and my problem, well, now I have the power to fix it.
You also have to be committed to fixing it, right? And oftentimes it's easier to point the finger at something else and to say, oh, well, it's something other than me that's causing this problem, and therefore I'm not going to fix it.
Today, there's no new ideas. It's all basically just being inspired by other people, taking what's already there and figuring out how can I apply that to me.
Ultimately, there's only going to be 4 problems in the business categorically. There's going to be a leads problem, an intake problem, team problem, or a profit problem. By tracking at least a handful of numbers in each of those 4 areas, you're going to find insights that you can drill in on. All right, looks like for today's episode, we're starting with Andy's story. I have no idea what it is.
All right, so I got an interesting story for you that is a recurring theme in law firms and their growth. It's a story about the misconception of what it takes to grow a law firm. So I was talking to a client yesterday, and we were doing a quick coaching call, and he was like, I need more leads. And I was like, okay, well, let's look at your numbers here, because he was under the impression that he needed more leads. And I wanted to figure out, because as I'm sure you've seen, there's this common misconception with law firm owners and really business. It's not even law firm owners, it's business owners in general, that they think that when they launch an ad, they either get a client or they don't get a client. And basically what that means, if they got a client, it means the ad worked. If they didn't get a client, it means that the ad didn't work, right? But the truth is that there's like 15 things that have to happen from the time you launch the ad until the client signs on the dotted line. And if any one of those things is broken, then what ends up happening is you end up not getting the client, and it might not be the ad's fault. It might not be the landing page's fault. It's somewhere there's a bottleneck. And if you can fix that bottleneck, then what happens is you can get into a situation where you can triple or even like quadruple a law firm's revenue very, very quickly. So we're looking through, and I was like, how many leads did you get in the last 2 weeks? So he's like, I got 15 leads in the last 2 weeks. I was like, okay, cool. How many how many of those leads were qualified? He said, okay, 13 of the leads were qualified. I said, okay, awesome. How many qualified leads actually booked a consultation? And he said 3. And then I said, okay, there's your problem right there. So it's not that the ads aren't working. It's not even that you need more leads, because we went further down the line, and of those 3 consultations, he signed up 2 clients. So his closing percentage is actually 66%. But the problem is that he's not getting enough people that are qualified to book a consultation. So it's not an issue with his ads right now. It's not an issue with his sales. It's an issue with something is happening on the phone call that is basically causing people to be qualified but not show up for the consultation. So it just goes back to something that I've really learned after working with you quite often, is that if you don't have data, if you're not paying attention to your data, you're really flying blind, and you're probably optimizing for the wrong things. We don't necessarily need to optimize for leads for this guy right now. What we need to do is we need to figure out how can we help him get more consultations booked from the leads that he already has. Because if he were just to triple his consultation booking process, then he would triple his revenue without spending a single dollar on leads. And somebody once told me, without data, you're just an idiot with an opinion. And I thought that this was actually a really good example of that, because, he came into the call thinking we need more leads. And if we didn't look at this data, then we would be going back to the team saying, hey guys, we need more leads. We need to figure out how do we get this guy more leads, when that's actually not the issue right now. And, we see this over and over. And you actually found that even with our own business, it wasn't a question of, we had an issue with our revenue and our sales. It wasn't even an issue. It just wasn't growing the way that we wanted it to. And once you actually really dove into the data, you found that the issue was, we're just not spending enough money on ads. And by fixing that one number, the next 3 months went, we're better than the prior 6 months. So it's just super, super interesting. And I wanted to talk about the importance of data, even though it's not sexy and it's not exciting. And honestly, I don't like it. That's against my personality, but it's 100% necessary. And if more people would focus on the data, like, what do you think would happen to people's law firms?
Yeah. And the example that you just used of someone who doesn't have enough leads turning into consultations, but when they do get the consultation, they're converting at 67%. There's just as many situations where people have the opposite problem, where they book a ton of their meetings, their leads, and turn them into consults, but they're not able to close when the consult happens, right? There's price objections, there's the inability to ask for the sale and actually bring the person through a verbal sales process that turns it into a signed client. And I think that wherever the process breaks is where you're going to see money flying out your business, right? Wherever the process is broken. And I think, like, yes, knowing which of those data points is most important. In the example that you just used in intake, knowing which of those data points is most important to fix is critical. And you also have to be committed to fixing it, right? And oftentimes it's easier to point the finger at something else and to say, oh, well, it's something other than me that's causing this problem, and therefore I'm not going to fix it, right? Because whenever you blame someone else for a problem or a piece of data, that you're basically just playing victim and saying, I can't solve this issue. And that's what I think puts people into the whole greener pastures mindset, which is like, oh, well, maybe the grass is greener if I just uproot everything I'm doing in my marketing and find a different strategy altogether. When had you just probed into that one problem area and just fixed, whether it's close rate during a consult or number of leads turned into a book consult, had I just probed in and fixed that one problem, I would have fixed that problem, and it would have saved me 1,000,001 other things that I would have done to try and fix the problem. And it's really hard to fix problems based on data, because it kind of forces you to admit you're wrong. And one of the exciting things about being CEO or being an owner of a company like you and I are, the interesting thing about owning a company is everything is your fault. Everything is your responsibility. You started the company. You hired the person. What's up, Jade? You started the company. You hired the team. You decided to get into the business that you got into. So to accept anything other than you are contributing to the problem, it prevents your ability to make decisions and solve things on that data. And it's not comfortable. It's not a comfortable process, because it forces you to admit that there's something you didn't know that caused this problem, or there's something that you did or didn't do that caused this problem. But it's much easier to just gloss over it.
Yeah. So have you ever heard power follows the blame finger?
No.
You ever heard that concept? So it's basically whoever you point your finger at in terms of who you're blaming for your problems, that's who has all the power. So people that blame the government, well, now the government has all the power, because the government is going to be able to dictate your outcomes, right? Or maybe it's, whoever it is. And honestly, it's funny, it's for a long time, it was, for me, when I was running my business, it was clients. I'm like, you know what? We're doing a great job, but the clients, they're just not picking up their phone. They don't know how to sell, all that type of stuff. So I was blaming the clients, and that's who had all the power. But as soon as I read Extreme Ownership, and there's a great quote in that book that we talk about quite often internally, which is, even if it's not my fault, it's still my problem. Well, now the finger turns around and points at me, and now I'm in control. Now I'm the one that, it might, as long as I accept that it's my fault and my problem, well, now I have the power to fix it. It's super, super interesting. Have you seen the new Aaron Rodgers documentary that just came out on Netflix?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah, it might have just come out like in the last couple of days. It's super interesting though, because he's even talking about how he uses data during a football game. So he's talking about when he's looking at passes and he's analyzing passes, he'll say, well, I know that if I do a go route, that's going to be a 60% completion rate. But if I do a go route on the inside shoulder, that's going to be a 20% completion rate. Or if I do a check down route, that's going to be a 90% completion rate. And if I do a slant route with this particular wide receiver, that's going to be a 45% completion rate. So he's calculating all this data, and he's actually using data to determine basically what his next play should be, right? And he's doing this in real time while he's on the field, which is super, super impressive. But by knowing all of his statistics, and by knowing that, okay, yeah, when I do this, this is typically what the result's going to be, then he can make informed decisions about, maybe we shouldn't do that 20% throw on 3rd and long. Maybe we should do something that's going to get us a 90% throw, 90% completion rate, But again, it all just comes down to data, and it all just comes down to knowing, being responsible for these things. So it's just super, super interesting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people who, you and I spent the majority of our lives in business not living by the data. Probably you more than me, but I still did it for, the first 70% of my life in business. You probably did it for 90%. This last 95. 10%, since we partnered, we've focused more on data, but there's a lot of excuses around how, if you just do great work for your clients and you're just a good, honest person and you do all this hard work and, then it'll just pay off and it'll all be fine and work out in the end. And what I found is that data is one of the least emotional, probably the least emotional part of business, but probably also the most informative. And I always say, people's credit cards don't lie. If somebody stops paying you, or if somebody doesn't sign up with you, or somebody does sign up with you, but then their case doesn't really result in any value for your firm, there is so much magical information within credit card statements, of your clients, your own credit card statements. I really believe that the wallet and the calendar don't lie. Because if we are in a free marketplace, especially in the United States, and in a free market, supply and demand drives most of consumer behavior, right? And to bridge the gap between what you do in business and how that ties into consumer behavior is really difficult. And for example, if your law firm is not growing, or if your business is not growing, there's a consumer behavior reason, probably rooted in data for that, as to why people aren't buying your services. And that's one side of the equation. And then there's also going to be a consumer behavior data back reason on why people aren't getting what they thought they were getting through your services, or whether their mind is blown when they buy your services, right? And all of that's data. And the hardest thing I think about living by the data is detaching yourself and your beliefs from it, right? Because it's really easy to get defensive. It's really easy to just make excuses that, this client was a pain in the ass, like you were saying, but that gives them all the power. But the data doesn't lie. And this is probably, it's the biggest thing that people lack in terms of creating progress in their business is lack of data, lack of acceptance around the data, and even worse, the inability to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself how I created this data.
I think that it's funny because so it's a lot of times what's happening, and law firms are notoriously a leaky bucket for leads, and it's you ever go to well, Cammie's a little young, she's not even a year yet, but when you go to a water park, have you ever seen that water park that basically they have, it's like a bucket, and there's a hose that fills up the bucket, and then eventually every 30 seconds the bucket tips over and dumps everything out. Sometimes law firms are like that, where it's like you're filling it up with leads, but then you got something that's tipping the bucket over and nothing's working well, right? And you can't figure out why. And a lot of times the answer for lawyers is, oh, I just need more leads. And that's actually not the case. We had a client, this is actually a great example. We had a client who is a family law attorney, and they were running LSA ads. And one of the things that we always want to do with LSA ads is we want to make sure that, we want to try to qualify the leads, because like they don't want to, they don't want to, the attorney, rightfully so, doesn't want to waste his time with people that are coming in and can't afford his services in the first place, right? But then we also, if it's somebody that's not going to be a good lead, we want to try to, kind of get them disqualified as quickly as possible, because, and not so much anymore, but you used to be able to dispute leads and get credit for the money you're paying Google, but it's not really even a thing too much anymore. But what was happening was, so there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. So I talked to the lawyer. He's like, oh, we're just getting broke people. All we're getting is broke people. That's it. So I was like, all right, well, let's talk about this. How are you qualifying? So what they're doing is, person calls up, and lead calls, and they say, hi, I'm looking to get a divorce. And immediately the person on the phone immediately says, okay, well, just so you know, our fees are $5,000. Is that going to be okay? I mean, they didn't build any trust. They didn't build any value. They didn't explain what's included. They just immediately threw the $5,000. And how many people do you think said, yeah, I would love to pay $5,000 right now to this person I just like zero. So it's like looking at that and like, look, it's not the person's fault. They just weren't trained properly. The person who's answering the phone wasn't properly trained. So, I was like, well, what we need to do, it's not that they're broke. We need to be smarter about how we qualify these people. Right. And I wrote a new script for them in terms of how to qualify them. And it was basically using a little bit of behavioral psychology and different things like that without actually scaring them away with a $5,000 price tag. What I told them was basically they need to say, okay, so all right, so you want to divorce, just so you know, our law firm is not the cheapest law firm in town, but we are one of the best law firms in the entire state. So just so you know, it's not going to be the cheapest, but we are the best. Is that still going to be okay? You're still going to want to come in for a consultation. And just doing that set up the expectation that, okay, this is not cheap, but also using the behavioral psychology. And I love strategically using the word but, because people psychologically focus on whatever people place their emotional emphasis on whatever you put after the word but. It establishes that they're not cheap, but it also does reaffirm that they're the best. And what happened was more people now started showing up for consultations. And just because more people showed up, they got more swings. And lo and behold, they got more clients and they made more money. And that happened to fix that particular thing. But without data, without looking at, all of our consultations are we're getting all of these leads, but nobody's showing up for consultations or nobody's booking a consultation, you would never know that. You would just think, oh, the leads are bad, or we're not getting enough leads, or we need more leads.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yesterday, I was calling. It's funny. I went through someone's intake process yesterday. I found this. I'm doing stem cell treatment in one of my knees as a long-term plan, like a multi-year plan to regenerate some meniscus in my knees from years of snowboarding, mountain biking, dirt biking. So I started looking into stem cell clinics and did the whole research process, looked up reviews, called the one, created a short list of like the 2 best ones I thought in the Philadelphia area, and then reached out to them. And the second one that I reached out to was the one that responded quickest to me, got me on a call quickest, and therefore I considered their services the most versus compared to the first one I reached out to. So that was principle number 1, quick follow-up. The quicker they got me on a call, option 2 actually now is my top option because they followed up with me quicker. So I'm on the initial consultation, which was only a 15-minute consultation, right? And the consultation went like me, first they asked me questions about what was I looking to do with stem cells, why was I looking to do it, a little bit about my history and sports I've done, and how active I am, stuff like that. And then it transitions to me asking questions about their approach and how they're going to create a multi-year plan to treat my knee and regenerate meniscus and cartilage. And she has a value proposition. She's like, okay, here's how this is what we do. We use this type of stem cell tissue, and here's why we do it. And then we do a multi-phase treatment sequence where you come in every 2 to 3 weeks, 4 different times, and here's why we do that. And it's a very effective process for X, Y, and Z reason, and our patients see results like social proof, proprietary process, right? And then it transitions to the latter part of the call, to the end of it, and the person goes, and you're going to be meeting with Dr. Mata, I think his name is. I don't quote me on that. And here's why that's important, because Dr. Mata has been doing this for X number of years. He's had X success stories with this. He's and you're going to meet one-on-one with him as a medical professional to do a full diagnostic. You'll be coming into our office. The first 15 minutes we'll collect health data, and then the remaining hour you'll be doing functional testing.
This is just for the consultation?
This was the initial 15-minute phone screening, right? Okay.
That's what I'm saying, to get you signed up for the consultation.
Yeah, so ready? So then it transitions to, and you're going to be getting all this, and our initial consult fee is only $200. So would you like me to charge that to Visa, American Express, or da-da-da-da-da? I was like, American Express. And in 5 seconds, I paid a $200 consult fee because of how it was positioned, right? So imagine the opposite. Imagine the person goes, hey, just before we talk, want to let you know it's $200 to talk to the doctor who you don't know or trust, and it's probably going to cost you around 10 grand once you do meet the doctor over those 4 different sessions. Is that okay with you? All right, now let's talk about why we're valuable.
Totally different experience. Right? It's funny because that's like what that does is breaking down the offer into its component parts is always perceived more valuable. It's like when they, on a late night infomercial, when they sell a knife or they sell a knife set, they sell you the knife, and then, when you buy now, you also get the butcher knife, and then you get the filleting knife, and then you get the knife block, and you get the sharp. All they're doing is selling a knife set, but it's how, but wait, there's more.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just interesting. I feel like more people should put themselves through sales processes. It's so often that we lose track of the mistakes our own business is making because we don't view our own business as a consumer views our business because we're so close to it. It's kind of like the thing you've told me a lot where you like to consult other entrepreneurs every now and then because you come up with more insights for our own businesses than you would otherwise just by staring at our business. By giving other people advice and kind of detaching yourself from your own business, you can become a better observer of the strengths and weaknesses of your own business, Yeah,
it just gets you to focus on solving different problems. It's like, it's weird. Like sometimes, do you ever find that if you just move to a different desk, you're more productive or you get more things done?
Yeah, and I do that. I actually try to theme where I work throughout the day so that I force location changes. And the conference room in our office where there's like all the windows.
Yeah.
And then there's my actual office with the standing desk. I always try to do if I have 2 very important actions throughout the day, I'll try to do one of those important actions at my desk, at the standing desk, and then one of them in the conference room. And it just feels like you're entering each room or area with a new mindset. But where were you going with that? Were you saying something similar?
Yeah, well, it's just I've found that, and I don't do that enough. I really should do that. It's just like changing your environment because you're changing the inputs that you're getting, so you're going to get different outputs. Because a lot of times, so for example, I have a lot of friends that are physical therapists and chiropractors. Somehow I became friends with all these people that own chiropractic clinics and physical therapists and stuff, which is funny, by the way. Every problem that lawyers have, it's the exact same thing with doctors. Yeah. It's like it's basically the exact same problems. But Yeah, because they'll ask me questions like, how do I get more patients to complete their treatment plan, or how do I get more patients to sign up? And I just start thinking of all these different things that they could do, and I start giving them advice and things like that. And I'm like, oh crap, why aren't we doing that? That's actually a really good
Mm.
idea. So some of the insights that I've had, actually most of the insights that I've had through my business, have not come from me just sitting there and thinking of something, or even me reading a book. It's been from me either talking to other people and helping them with their business, or going to masterminds and hearing how, oh, here's how this restaurant did this
Mm.
one thing. And I think, oh, wow, that's really interesting. That restaurant did that. I can't do X, Y, and Z, but I could modify it a little bit and
Mm.
do this thing. Some of our biggest insights and some of the biggest game changing things for our business have come through just helping other people solve their problems, and then just having that light bulb moment, because you're out of your normal comfort zone.
Think of the biggest one of the biggest differentiators that really kickstarted SMB team when we merged, and since we merged. What was one of the biggest differentiators in our sales and marketing? I would say the virtual events, right? The virtual events were really kind of, before we had the book, that it was our primary, I'll call it like transformation delivery mechanism, like the way that we helped people have transformations through our marketing. Help, what's the thing you say? Prove you can help people.
Prove you can help them by actually helping them.
Yeah, so
It's a Frank Kern
so
quote.
like the virtual events were our best way of doing that, and therefore they provided a ton of value in our marketing and our sales and marketing approach. Did we learn how to get or master our virtual events from another marketing agency? Like, have we ever seen one other marketing agency do virtual events the way that we do to sign up clients? I don't think so.
There might be one. I haven't seen it though.
So like that is a perfect case in point example. Is like one of the biggest differentiators in our sales and marketing, the virtual events we've done, is not something commonly done by companies in our space, especially virtually. And we learn the principles of that from people in other spaces, right? And and Jay Abraham says this is like, there are blue ocean opportunities in every business that can be gained by taking something from another industry and bringing it to your industry. And we say that, but oftentimes it's so funny, like with lawyers, they're like, because we have practice area masterminds in our coaching program. And it's like, I was reading an email from a client earlier this morning, and they were like, I'm a bankruptcy lawyer and I just want to spend time with bankruptcy lawyers, because we have the mastermind group, which includes bankruptcy and business law attorneys, right? Because typically bankruptcy attorneys, the ones that we work with, are doing B2B bankruptcy rather than individual bankruptcies. Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, if I was a bankruptcy attorney, I would want to spend time with some bankruptcy attorneys for best practices, but I'd want to spend 75% of my time with people outside of bankruptcy because most bankruptcy practices don't grow. So why would I want to learn from, PI firms and, firms that consistently get past 5 to 20 million in revenue, rather than just creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of just surrounding myself with people who all have the same beliefs as I do.
It's just an echo chamber. Like, look at politics, right? Part of the reason that we're so, and I know you love politics, but part of the reason that we're so, that politics, part of the reason that we are where we are right now is because the social media algorithms don't introduce you to new ideas.
Yeah.
Because people like people that they agree with.
Yep.
So what happens is, all you do is you hear the same ideas over and over and over and over and over again, and nobody advances, and that becomes your belief. So think about that. If all you're doing is if you're a bankruptcy attorney and all you're doing is surrounding yourself with other bankruptcy attorneys, everybody's got the same ideas. They're all regurgitating all the same stuff. So you're just hearing the same thing over and over and over again, and there's no growth. Like, if you're a bankruptcy attorney, the last person you need to be around is a bankruptcy attorney. You need to be around somebody that's not doing anything to do with bankruptcy. So you can say, okay, this is what the 99% of bankruptcy attorneys are doing. I don't want to be in that 99%. I want to be in that 1% because I think everybody wants to be successful. So if you do what everyone else does, then you're going to get what everyone else gets. So you have to get out of that. You've got to get out of that echo chamber. And that's actually one of the reasons that we're so successful is because of the fact that I don't really hang out with other marketing agency owners. I don't, I don't hang out with a lot of, I'm friendly with people in the legal space, but I don't hang out with other legal marketers. I hang out with, a bunch of chiropractors, and I hang out with people that have e-commerce businesses and all these different like startup and venture capital people and everything, because it allows you to get different perspectives on different problems. And like Dan Kennedy is one of my favorite marketers. And he actually talked about this exact thing. He said, one of the unique advantages he has is that he has so many different clients in so many different industries that he's able to get a glimpse into what all these industries are doing. And he can say, oh, this is working really well for real estate agents. I bet that would work well for restaurants. And he's basically able to take one idea from one industry to another. He actually said, it was a quote, this isn't the exact quote, but it was something to the effect of, I've never had an original idea in my life, and I don't plan on ever having one. And this is the guy who's credited as being like the greatest marketer of all time. And he's basically just saying, all I do is I borrow one idea from an industry and I give it to another idea. It's not stealing. It's just being inspired, because you are creating new ideas. You're creating new ways of doing things. We've never stolen anything. But what we do is we'll be inspired by things and we'll say, oh, that's really interesting that they're doing this. What if we did this for legal based on that idea over there? And that's how it works. If you look at, there's no original ideas. If you look at like the Beatles were influenced by like Buddy Holly and by like Elvis. And like, you look at all the bands that the Beatles have influenced, and then all the bands that those bands have influenced. It's like, there's a direct line from like, Buddy Holly and Elvis and like jazz musicians and blues musicians, all the way up to Lady Gaga and Justin Bieber and The Weeknd and, all the people that are popular today. There's no new ideas. It's all basically just being inspired by other people, taking what's already there and figuring out how can I apply that to me?
Yeah, I think there's two types of creativity, and I call the first type synergistic creativity and then organic creativity. And when you look at inventions, it's like so funny when people have like business ideas. It's almost like they think, especially like inexperienced people in business, they think that invention or like the greatest inventions came from organic creativity, which basically means someone had a bolt of lightning go through them and this pinnacle moment happened in the blink of an eye, and they came up with this disruptive idea out of the blue, just appeared out of nothing, right? And in the Innovation Secrets of Steve Jobs, the book, it talks about how most innovation is not from organic creativity. Creativity that comes from that lightning beam insight is 1% of inventions that change the world. 99% of inventions were small iterations on existing inventions or a combination of two inventions put together, right? And like this is actually a statistical factor of inventions that change the course of the world and actually create sustainable businesses behind them. And synergistic creativity is what it sounds like. You're creating synergy between existing inventions, existing ideas, and you're actually just tying them together. And I think that it's really hard to be innovative if you don't learn anything outside of your echo chamber, because if synergistic creativity is 99% of value-based inventions and ideas, and you prevent yourself from mixing and matching ideas from other areas, then the quality of your ideas reduce. Therefore, the quality of your results in life and business reduce, and you stop seeing improvement in your life. And there's this really interesting thing on learning I read. I believe Brian Tracy was the one who first talked about this. And it's this interesting thing about the brain as a muscle when you learn something. Like when you eat food, if you eat too much food, eventually your stomach is going to tell you that I'm not hungry anymore, right? However, with ideas, that same full feeling, the opposite happens, right? So the more you fuel your mind with new ideas and education, the more hungry you become for new ideas and education, because it's the opposite of hunger, where it's like you can actually quench hunger. The more you learn, the more curious you become, the more you want to learn. And as soon as you stop that learning commitment, you become less curious. You actually want to learn less. Therefore, you're less receptive to new ideas. You're less receptive to improving areas of your life because you start feeling like you know it all. But that's typically a sign when you know it all, that's typically a sign that you've stopped learning in an area, and that becomes a mental laziness response to you having stopped learning.
Well, what's that called? The Dunning-Kruger effect. The more you learn about something, you realize the more you realize, the less you know about it. Like it's
maybe
I'm
that's
going through
it.
that with chess right now. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so Mason, you've met my son Mason. He's amazing at math, and he's in chess club. He's 9 years old. He's at chess club. He's in chess club. And I understood how to play chess, right? And I would always beat him because I'm 41 years old and he's 9 years old. Well, now he's taking chess. He's in chess club. So now he beats me every single time we play. So now I'm staying up late at night learning about chess so I can beat my 9-year-old in chess, which has not gone well so far. But the more I actually start learning about chess, the more I'm like, holy crap, there is so much to this game. Like, I don't know if you've ever played it before, but it's pretty simple to learn. Like, I mean, the pieces go here, but like once you start getting into like theory and like I was looking at like opening moves, right? Dude, there's books that are an inch thick just about opening moves in chess, which is just, I mean, it's like, I'm looking at, I'm like, I don't understand how I'm ever going to beat this kid ever again because I'm never going to learn this stuff, you know? But there's something else that's really interesting. I wanted to go back to in terms of getting out of your comfort zone. What's funny is that we do these live events, right? And we do the events and we provide amazing information during these events. I mean, like there's lawyers that come to these events, never even hire us, and basically change their life, their law firm, their life, all this stuff just from what they learn at this event, right? But there's two things that you can learn from this event. And this is something that I've been telling our clients over and over and over again, because every week we do a weekly coaching call. And on weeks that we do the events, I think we have a coaching call, but it's not run by you or myself, obviously, because we're doing the event. And the week before, I'll always tell our clients, I'm like, listen, come to the event. And there's two things I want you to do. First of all, I want you to watch what happens at the event, and I want you to listen to the speakers. And a lot of them are your fellow, they're other clients of SMB team, talking about how they've been able to implement everything that we're teaching during these coaching sessions. And there's going to be a lot of great stuff. But the other part is I want you to watch what we do and why we do it. How do we use social proof? How do we overcome objections that we know that people are going to have before hiring us? How do we, control the state? How do we, use behavioral psychology and things like that? Like pay attention to not just what we're saying, but pay attention to what we're doing, because you can learn so much by observing what other successful people do. I love going to timeshare presentations, because think about from a sales perspective, think about the hurdle that you have to overcome on a timeshare presentation. You have to overcome the fact that somebody is sitting across from you. The only reason, and they do not want what you're selling, right? They do not want it. The only reason they're sitting there is because they want the $200 Red Lobster gift card that they're promised at the end, right? And you have to overcome all of these objections and get them to sign a contract for like $25,000. In addition to that, it's a monthly or yearly maintenance fee of like $1,400 or $2,000 or whatever. You got to overcome all these objections. So I love timeshare presentations because I love seeing all the different things that they do. And I love seeing how they overcome. And, Myron Golden talks about this. He says, one of the reasons that people are not great at sales is because they're also resistant to sales, right? But every time somebody tries to sell you something, you need to understand that something great is going to happen to you. One, you're either going to have a great sales experience, and you're going to learn all kinds of things that you can do also during your sales calls, because like lawyers don't think about this, but lawyers are in sales. Lawyers, like when you have a consultation, you are selling something. You're selling your legal services, right? So you're either going to have a great sales experience and you're going to learn exactly what to do, or you're going to have a terrible sales experience and you're going to see exactly what not to do during your sales experience. But the thing is that when you look at other people that are great, that have to, I mean, think of how every single thing in a timeshare presentation just has to be choreographed and has to be mapped out so that you can overcome all those objections. And you've got that momentum where they don't want to buy, right? It's like, it's such a great learning experience. So I know we're wrapping up here. Why don't we talk? Let's get back to data real quick, right? What are the 3 or 4 things that law firms can start tracking right away that will have a meaningful impact on their bottom line?
Well, I think it's the law firm growth acceleration numbers, right? You need to track leads and all the variations of leads, intake and all the variations of intake, average fee per case, something around.
Let's go back to all the variations of intake real quick, because I want to touch on that. So there's how many leads do you get? How many of them are qualified? How many book a consultation? How many show up for that consultation? And then how many actually close? Because all of if one of those is if there's a chokehold in one of those, then all the numbers behind are going to suffer. Go ahead.
Yeah, that would cover leads and intake, right? Then there's average fee. You definitely want to track that, right? I mean, if let's say let's say you take the advice you just gave, you're going to find at least 1 or 2 choke points in that in the leads equation, right? Let's say you start tracking your average fee per case. You're going to start very quickly being able to see how you can either increase your average fee by charging more or attracting higher value cases. And you probably need to track something around profit and the operating cash in your bank account growing every month. I think employee happiness and performance is something else to track. Like employee happiness is pretty easy to track. You just send your actual employees a happiness survey called Employee Net Promoter Score. Same exact thing you can do for your clients to look at how well you're treating your clients and have them rate you. But ultimately, there's only going to be 4 problems in the business categorically. There's going to be a leads problem, an intake problem, a team problem, or a profit problem. And by tracking at least a handful of numbers in each of those 4 areas, you're going to find insights that you can drill in on. So yeah, data is critical. And in our next episode, we want to know what you want us to drill into. So shoot us an email, message us, support@smbteam.com. Let us know what topics you want us to go into in the next episode. And then Andy will start editing his life so that he can tell stories about the things you want him to tell stories about. So basically, we have Neuralink in Andy's brain. So your feedback that you respond to this podcast with about what you want us to talk about will immediately upload into Andy's Neuralink in his brain. And then the things he does throughout his week are going to change based on your feedback, which means he's going to be able to keep telling stories that help you grow your law firm.
It'll determine what experiences I have. So and what I watch on Netflix and YouTube. So and to wrap up, just remember, I'll end as I started. Just remember, without data, you're just an idiot with an opinion. So don't be idiots. Track that data. And I will say this: I was an idiot with an opinion for the majority of my career, but I've finally seen the light, and it's very, very comforting to know our data now. So, and you can actually make a profit apparently too when you do that. So, which works pretty well. So, anything else? I guess the podcast.
That's it. See you in the next one, my peeps. Make sure that you upload your feedback into Andy's Neuralink. We'll see you on the next one.